Imagine if tomorrow morning, every bank account on Earth suddenly disappeared. No balances, no savings, every digital record gone. What would actually remain? Your house? Still there. The food in your pantry, the land you live on, the machines that build our infrastructure, the physical labor humans provide, all of it remains exactly where it was. Humans spend their entire lives working, sweating, and building in the physical world. Yet the wealth we extract from that immense effort is shockingly fragile. The numbers humanity treats as an absolute reality every single day have no physical form. Unplug the servers, and these balances simply stop existing. Modern civilization rests on coordinated belief rather than a bedrock of physical reality. It is a shared agreement powerful enough to organize billions of people into a single economic machine. For most of human history, people survived without money. A fisherman traded fish. A farmer traded grain. A blacksmith traded tools. Value was direct and physical. If you wanted something, you exchanged something equally useful. Direct barter created a logistical bottleneck called the coincidence of wants. If a fisherman didn't need grain, finding a perfectly aligned trade was inefficient. Civilization solved this by inventing a universal intermediary, an object everyone trusted, bypassing individual needs. At first, societies chose rare metals like gold, silver, and copper. They were difficult to dig up, hard to counterfeit, and naturally scarce. You can't eat gold, you can't drink it, you can't survive with it. It has virtually no biological survival value. Its power came almost entirely from a collective human agreement. People decided to trust that gold represented value. And once enough people participated in that trust, the belief became reality. The moment a society accepts symbolic value over practical value, true power shifts to whoever controls the production of those symbols. Over time, humanity stopped exchanging useful things directly. Instead, people began hoarding the proxies of value. Centralizing these symbols required management, so massive institutional architectures emerged. Banks, debt systems, and credit facilities were built to house and regulate this abstract wealth. To increase trade speed, heavy metals were eventually replaced by mass-produced paper notes. It was lighter, faster, and much easier to transport. Eventually, even the paper became too slow. The system decoupled from physical reality completely, replacing physical notes with invisible records housed in electronic databases. Today, people sacrifice decades of very real physical labor and time just to accumulate these invisible digits. Through this escalation, money evolved. It began as a simple trading tool and morphed into the invisible operating system running the globe. Stop and think for a second. What actually backs the digital numbers sitting in your bank account right now? There is no infinite vault of wealth holding it all up. The system is backed exclusively by the simultaneous participation of billions of people. Money has value strictly because people collectively believe it does. The structural integrity of any financial institution relies on a single assumption, that the participants will not question the illusion at the exact same time. Look closely at massive economic events like runaway inflation or sudden market crashes. They aren't strictly mathematical inevitabilities. They are rapid shifts in mass psychology. Trust is notoriously fragile. A global architecture that relies entirely on humans maintaining a shared hallucination is highly volatile. Money is the most successful piece of engineered belief in history. By maintaining the trust that holds this illusion together, specific institutions and people direct the mechanics of the entire modern world. For most of human history, wealth was entirely tangible. If a nation claimed to be rich, that wealth existed as a physical object, usually locked away in the dark. Under the gold standard, every note printed by a government required actual reserves of gold sitting in a vault like this to back it up. The paper was simply a receipt for the physical mass held inside. That connection created a strict boundary. A government couldn't magically invent more currency because the money supply was bottlenecked by the literal speed at which men could pull ore from the earth. Because currency was permanently tethered to physical scarcity, human ambition, empire building, and economic expansion all faced a hard, unyielding ceiling. But human ambition is highly dynamic, while physical resources are entirely static. Waging war, expanding borders, and maintaining massive military forces are relentlessly expensive endeavors. Time and again, powerful governments ran out of money. Their desire to conquer and grow slammed directly into the bottom of their empty gold reserves. Systems built on power naturally resist any force that tells them to stop. The physical limits of gold became an intolerable obstacle to the state. So, rather than accepting defeat or slowing down their expansion, financial architects slowly began evolving a way around the rules of physical reality itself. The escape route began with a very simple observation about human behavior. Most depositors never showed up to withdraw all their physical gold at the exact same time. Since only a fraction of the reserves was needed for daily operations, banks realized they could lend far more paper money than they held in their vaults. This practice became known as fractional reserve banking. A single physical gold deposit could be split and multiplied into multiple loans simultaneously. The original gold sat in one place, while several people held paper claiming ownership. Wealth was multiplying, not from finding more gold, but strictly through accounting. This entire mechanism rested on a single, fragile condition. As long as the public trusted the banks, and everyone didn't demand their physical gold at once, the math held up perfectly. The global economy had quietly mutated. The bedrock of money was no longer absolute physical scarcity, but collective human belief. At first, the results were staggering. Economies expanded at breakneck speeds, global trade accelerated, and industrial growth exploded, all fueled by this new multiplied capital. But the underlying math was getting extremely dangerous. The sheer volume of paper currency circulating around the globe was rapidly dwarfing the actual physical gold meant to back it. The breaking point arrived in 1971. The United States government officially ended the gold standard, declaring the dollar would no longer be redeemable for physical metal. Because international markets relied heavily on the dollar to conduct their trade, severing the dollar from gold effectively unanchored the entire planet's monetary system. By cutting that final tie, civilization threw away the training wheels of physical reality. Money became a completely abstract, infinitely expandable concept. Looking at this dense wall of digital stock numbers, you can see the reality of modern wealth. It is entirely symbolic. Trillions of dollars exist almost exclusively as electronic entries, moving as pure mathematics across screens. Without a physical anchor to restrain the supply, governments can print currency at will, banks can authorize new loans instantly, and debt can multiply infinitely. Yet this colossal, towering system is held together by something deeply fragile. It is backed by absolutely nothing except unquestioning human confidence. We have fully departed from an economy based on exchanging tangible, scarce value. We live inside a giant, infinite belief system. It is a machine generating endless wealth, working flawlessly, so long as humanity never looks down. Meet David. Like most people, David follows the standard formulas for financial stability to the letter. He goes to work, he puts in the hours, and he keeps his paperwork in perfect order. This chart shows David's progress. He earns a reliable 3% annual salary increase and consistently deposits into savings. Over 5 years, the lines only go up. Watching these absolute numbers grow provides deep psychological comfort. But this sense of momentum relies on a narrow view of the data. To see the full picture, we have to look at what's happening outside the bank account. The reality of David's situation becomes visible when we shift the focus to the environment where he actually has to live and spend. This chart plots two metrics side by side. The left bar is David's income, inching up by 3%. The right bar represents the cost of housing, food, and daily essentials. Those costs climb at a much steeper angle, quickly towering over his income. His larger salary buys fewer actual goods. This creates a paradox. By leaving his money in savings, David is experiencing a net loss. The purchasing power of those saved dollars is slowly evaporating. People work to earn money, often unaware that the currency itself is acting as an opposing force. Despite the raises and the consistent savings, David is effectively moving backward. This suggests the math of his household is being overridden by a much larger set of numbers. To find the driver of that math, we have to zoom out to the national scale. Modern governments spend extraordinary amounts of capital on military systems, massive infrastructure projects, and sweeping financial bailouts. But almost no modern government generates enough actual tax revenue to sustain this level of spending. This graphic shows the result. A fixed inner circle of actual revenue is dwarfed by a continuously expanding outer ring of national debt. This expansion has continued for decades, reaching a point where repayment through normal means is mathematically impossible. When a government reaches this point, the system adapts. It alters the rules of the currency. The response to extreme debt is inflation. By expanding the money supply, the system gradually decreases the currency's value. This makes the government's fixed debt cheaper to pay off over time. This deliberate dilution of the currency is the exact mechanism draining the purchasing power of David's hard-earned labor and his savings. But there is a counter-experience. While David's cash loses value, those who hold tangible assets, like real estate and equities, see a different result. This flow shows how the transfer works. On the left, as new money enters the system, the individual dollar shrinks to service debt. On the right, that same influx pushes the price of hard assets higher, shielding owners from erosion. The mechanics of the currency create a divergence. Labor is diluted, while ownership is compounded. Because the currency is constantly losing value, simply saving and standing still results in moving backward. This erosion forces people into perpetual economic motion. It compels citizens to work longer hours and take on more financial risk just to maintain their current standard of living. The system requires this behavior. Modern economies are not designed for stability. They function like living organisms that must constantly expand to survive. That need for growth is why financial markets panic during recessions and why governments fear deflation. In this structure, stillness leads to instability. The constant financial pressure on the individual is the necessary fuel used to keep this machine expanding. Yet while society teaches people how to earn money, it rarely explains how the monetary system actually functions. This omission serves a purpose. If the link between inflation and wealth transfer were widely understood, the current economic structure would face immediate instability. The system relies on the invisibility of its mechanics. By keeping the erosion of purchasing power slow and gradual, it avoids scrutiny. While David fixates on the nominal numbers rising on his screen, he remains unaware of the broader economic environment designed to absorb his progress. The machine survives because of this confusion. Study, work, earn, consume, repeat. We are trained into this cycle from the moment we enter the school system. The trade feels logical. We give away our time and labor to secure the physical resources required to stay alive. Yet, even when a person's physical needs are met, when the roof is paid for and the fridge is full, the cycle rarely slows down. If survival is already secured, what are we actually chasing? We have tied our identities to a financial loop so tightly that we can no longer distinguish between our biological needs and the artificial demands of the system. This disconnect began when money detached from physical scarcity. It stopped being a receipt for a specific amount of gold and became a digital ghost. Without a physical anchor, money shifted from the world of mathematics into the world of psychology. We don't stockpile currency for its own sake. We chase the feelings it promises, the relief of security, the high of status, or validation of a specific identity. Because these needs are emotional, they are subject to the same triggers as any other human impulse. If you can influence a person's sense of safety or their fear of being left behind, you can influence how they spend, work, and vote. The economy has evolved into a system designed to move these emotional levers. It is an architecture of behavioral control. At the macro level, the financial world hides behind a wall of impenetrable jargon and high-frequency algorithms to maintain the appearance of cold rationality. But look at how markets actually move. Bubbles and crashes are not the result of careful calculation, but the physical evidence of mass panic. The market is an emotional crowd. It moves based on how millions of people feel about the future at the exact same time. Financial news outlets use technical terms like volatility or correction to provide a logical explanation for what is essentially a sudden swing in the global mood. The global economy functions as an engine powered by the volatile energy of human expectation. This emotional engine is maintained by central banks, the invisible architects operating beneath the surface of modern civilization. They manage the world by turning dials most people never see. They adjust liquidity, set the price of credit, and manage the pressure of inflation. When the cost of credit rises, the dream of owning a home moves further out of reach for millions. When liquidity dries up, businesses stop hiring and expansion plans are abandoned. These technical adjustments dictate the level of anxiety or confidence in a nation. They decide whether a population feels prosperous or desperate. Most people experience the resulting stress of a price hike or a lost job without ever identifying the individuals who adjusted the dials. Influence is most effective when it is invisible. By remaining in the background, the system directs behavior without triggering resistance. A small group of decision-makers can change the trajectory of millions of lives by simply shifting a decimal point on a screen. When you view the economy through this lens, you stop looking at data and start looking at the stories being told. Market value is determined by the strength of a narrative. If the crowd believes a currency is safe, it remains valuable. If they stop believing, the value vanishes. Modern finance is an architecture built on the collective acceptance of specific stories. In a world without physical backing, the most powerful person in the room is the one who can convince the crowd to keep believing in the narrative. Deliberate. Belief is the only thing that sustains the value of the modern world. Controlling the story means controlling the collective behavior of the population. By setting the narrative of growth or scarcity, these architects direct how people act. These unseen forces define the boundaries of our physical world. They determine which industries receive investment and which communities are left to decay. We live within a constructed psychological reality. Every financial choice we make is a response to an invisible architecture designed to guide our every move. We walk around every day carrying an assumption in our pockets. We check our bank apps and believe we are looking at actual intrinsic value. But what sits behind those numbers is a void. The biggest financial lie ever told is that money itself is wealth. It isn't. This diagram illustrates the separation between physical reality and paper symbols. Real wealth sits heavily on one side: energy, land, food, infrastructure, technology, and human capability. These are the physical and intellectual inputs that actually keep a civilization alive. Money is merely a symbolic claim ticket pinned to those real resources. Yet we have built a society that spends its entire existence aggressively chasing the paper tickets, completely forgetting about the prize they represent. Zoom out to the macro level, and you see an entire modern civilization operating under a shared trance. We are mesmerized by the symbol. People trade the only truly finite resource they possess, their own lifespans, just to watch a ledger of abstract digits tick upward in an account. The result of that lifelong pursuit is a lasting disconnection. You can accumulate massive numerical scores while remaining entirely separated from any genuine, tangible freedom. When billions of people engage in a cycle of self-exhaustion for something that isn't physically real, society is caught in a collective hypnosis, which raises a quiet, vital question. If the money isn't real, what exactly is controlling our lives? Early financial systems had a clear logic. A coin represented a fraction of a physical commodity. The symbol in your hand matched a tangible reality in the world. As systems evolved, that relationship stretched. The distance between physical claim and paper representation grew wider, until the tether finally snaps. Today, the anchor is gone. Trillions of units whip across global networks instantaneously, moving as digital ghosts from ledger to ledger. Algorithms and automated code now process these transactions at speeds a human mind cannot perceive, dictating market movements based on programmed logic rather than physical scarcity. The connection to tangible reality has been severed. We are operating within an ecosystem of pure, untethered abstraction. It is tempting to look at those glowing data nodes and assume global markets are driven by cold, rational mathematics. They aren't. The actual mechanism is intensely human. Currencies fluctuate based on psychological states. A market rises on collective greed and crashes on collective panic. To keep that system expanding, it requires continuous artificial fuel, which we inject in the form of debt. Debt pulls future expectations into the present to guarantee endless growth. The machine is in reality a massive emotional engine. As long as the masses maintain psychological confidence in its existence, the engine continues to run. If we want to understand the true nature of the economy, look past the spreadsheets. We must view it as a map of permissions and incentives, dictating where human energy flows. Because we believe these symbols hold value, we move according to the system's gravity. We spend decades learning specific skills and sacrifice thousands of mornings to specific tasks, not because of biological necessity, but because the ledger promises a reward. This makes the economy a massive, invisible system for managing human action at scale. As the central node of belief pulses, it dictates where cities are built and populations organized. Controlling incentives controls results. This conviction clears coastlines for ports and forests for steel mills, happening only because we agreed a ledger line made it worth the cost. But history leaves behind a clear record. No financial structure is permanent. Every monetary empire inevitably buckles under its own weight and transforms. The pressure on these vast systems mounts the exact moment the underlying psychological belief begins to fracture, which leaves us with a highly unsettling paradox. The sprawling cities, the global markets, the entire infrastructure of modern wealth, it all relies entirely on billions of people waking up and agreeing to believe in it together. The evolution of the system is a historical certainty. The only remaining variable is whether ordinary people will recognize the illusion before the machine takes its next form.